Hey guys, I just wanted to say thank you for using my creator code whenever you purchase any Sims 4 DLC on the EA app or thesims.com. I receive a 5% commission each time you use my code, which means you're directly supporting me as a creator. I know there are a lot of codes floating around out there, so I am very grateful that you've chosen me to support in this way. Thank you so much. Hey guys, it is MissSimReno. If you are returning to the channel, welcome back. And if you're brand new, I am very excited that you decided to join me here today for another speed build. And we're actually in Strangerville, a world that I have not built in a very, very long time. And this is also kind of like a special build because I'm not going to make any promises, but what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to build a home for each generation of the Not So Berry challenge, which I thought would be super fun. Way back in the day. I mean, the infancy of my channel. I'm talking like maybe 5-6 years ago. I don't even know how long I've been doing this anymore. I've lost track, but I've been doing this for a little while. And one of the very first things I did, well, number one, I went overboard with how many things I took on when I first started my channel. Let me just say that. And one of those things that I took on was the Not So Berry challenge. And I did enjoy it, but honestly, in typical me fashion, I just got overwhelmed with doing, I think at the time it was the 100 Baby Challenge, Rags to Riches, the Not So Berry, and trying to do speed builds. Don't recommend. I don't recommend doing that many things at once, especially if this is not something that you're doing full time. Anyway, I digress. Unsolicited advice. So I thought it would be fun to kind of revisit the Not So Berry Challenge, but make builds specific to each generation. So the very first generation is the Mint generation, which is what we're building for today. And you might be wondering, like, this is a little bit different maybe than other minty builds that you've seen before. So my strategy with this was to not go overboard with the color of that generation in the build itself. Like, I tried to add touches, especially to the exterior. Like, I used this kind of like paint chipped siding from Horse Ranch and then these kind of minty green colored flower boxes. But I didn't go nuts with mint decorations inside because, to be frank, there are some colors in game that we have a lot of items in. Is that the right way to say that? Yeah. A lot of items in, like the color red, for example. But the minty things that we have are a very particular aesthetic in the game. And since I wanted to build in Strangerville, and I'll explain why, I knew the aesthetic was going to be a little bit different and it wasn't going to really support a lot of those items in the way that I think would work well. It wasn't the aesthetic I was going for. We kind of have like this rustic, old industrial, sci-fi, steampunk look going on right now. And I just didn't think a lot of the items, like for example, from the Nifty Knitting Stuff pack would work great for the Mint Gen or even Cats and Dogs. But that is not the aesthetic I was going for at all. And the reason for that, so for the Mint generation, the traits of the sim have to be vegetarian, jealous, and materialistic. That doesn't really play a part in why I ended up building here, but they have the Chief of Mischief aspiration and they're in the scientist career. So I have seen a lot of people build for this gen in Oasis Springs, which makes sense because when you have Get to Work and you play with the scientist career, it looks like the lab is kind of in an extension of Oasis Springs. But I asked you all on the posts tab, which is such a silly name. It used to be the community tab. Now it's just posts. I don't get it. Whatever. I asked where you think the Mint Gen would start out. And a lot of people said Strangerville because of the scientist career, because of some of the things with the scientist career, because you have to master it. Like, you have to go to 6 a.m., you have to make a lot of inventions. There's like this alien component, and Strangerville fits that bill perfectly, in my opinion. So I thought it would work really nicely, especially since it's still like a desert environment in Strangerville. So I thought this would be so perfect. And we start out in the kitchen for the interior, and I wanted it to be kind of industrial, but I still wanted it to be very comfortable and welcoming and warm. And my first go of it wasn't it, but then I ended up here. I used this, I want to just call it a wallpaper because I don't remember what category it's under. It might be masonry or something like that, but it's from the Desert Luxe kit. It's perfect. I went with a very industrial vibe in here because it just fit the exterior as well. Like, if I went super contemporary, it just would have given my brain some form of whiplash. But I really, really loved this interior. So the front door is technically upstairs. There's no entry to the first floor on the first floor. So you do enter the house upstairs and you walk right into the living room and the kitchen, which I thought was kind of neat. It's a little bit different. It's absolutely not my typical house. And then downstairs is going to be all of the bathrooms, the bedrooms, and a little lab for your Mint Air, for your Mint Gen Air, if you will. The generation starter with a bunch of things for them to use. Like I think I added the chemistry station, like the chemistry analyzer thing. I think there's even the wormhole portal, so they can just go immediately to 6am. And what I tried to do, because I wasn't using a lot of minty details, is I tried to use little tiny things here and there that hinted to what this gen was kind of about. So like this little planter from the Comfy Gamer Kit. It's this little alien planter. It's so cute. And I use this UFO light from Strangerville as well, though I did have to size it down twice because that light's freaking huge. It's unnecessary. It's so big. But I was trying to kind of tip my hat to the fact that at least one of the Sims that lives here is very much into science and aliens and space exploration and stuff like that, which I think is kind of interesting because I believe that the yellow gen, which is Gen 3, has the astronaut career and like the nerd brain aspiration. So they're also really into like science, specifically rocket science and stuff like that. But there really isn't that alien component. So that's what I wanted to bring in to this build. And I thought it was so fun. This has actually been, so thus far, at the time we're recording this, I've built for the Mint Gen, the Rose Gen, and I'm conceptualizing for the Yellow Gen. So the first 3 generations I'm starting to build for, and it's been really, really refreshing because it's very different. Like building with intent has been extremely different. Building for a particular theme or a particular aspiration or career and stuff. I've done stuff like that before, but this is like extreme for me, and it was super, super fun. I also made a little reading nook over there off the kitchen because I didn't know what to do with that space. And then the living room is a little bit odd. The sofa doesn't face the television, for example. It's kind of off to the left-hand side of the sofa if you were sitting on it, but still, it works. Your Sims can watch TV. It's a functional living room, and everything matches really nicely. It is a lot of brown because I did go with this brown leather couch from the Industrial Loft Kit, but that's because I wanted the wood tones all to match because we have a lot of like honey woods in the kitchen. If I had used the green swatch, I think the wood was a lot darker. So I wasn't feeling it that day. So I went with very, very brown tones, but I think it's very warm and, like I said, welcoming. For me, it's extremely cozy. I try not to overuse that term because I try to make all of my builds feel a level of quote unquote cozy, but I really liked this one. Even though it's very earthy and has that industrial feel, it still feels very homey to me. I've never used these in my life, I don't think. Those little, what are they called? I don't know, the little overhang things. I think they're technically meant to go over like front doors on exteriors, but I loved using them on these smaller windows on the interior. It was super fun for me. I also added a little stack of magazines that look like science magazines or subscriptions, like scientific journals and stuff like that. I did size up this little screen TV as well, just to make it look a little bit bigger. We added a stereo in that reading nook, and then I added like a couple of stacks of papers and files and stuff like that, as if the Sim sometimes brings their work upstairs. If they don't want to just kind of sit in their lab the whole time and review all this documentation, they bring it upstairs and sometimes they leave it there. And now we're moving on to the first floor in reverse order of what I typically do. And like I said, this is where all the bedrooms and the bathrooms and the lab are. So there are 2 bedrooms, and then there's the lab, and I think it's 2.5 bathrooms because there is a half bath off of the lab. You don't actually have to do this in gameplay, but I was thinking it was a nice quick place off the lab to not only use the restroom, but maybe like the sink there is like a chemical sink. So in case you get chemicals like in your eyes or something like that, they always have those in like laboratories and schools and stuff. So I thought that would make sense. But the first bedroom that we work on is the primary bedroom. And for the Mint generation, they don't have any limit to how many children they can have. So for example, the Rose Gen, which is Gen 2, you're limited to having only 1 child. But for the Mint Gen, you're not restricted in any capacity. And I chose to do it for this one and didn't do it for the Rose Gen build that I've completed already, but I added the second bedroom here and I decorated it for like a child or maybe like a preteen. I was thinking more like preteen, but obviously we don't have that life stage, so it doesn't matter. So I did add a second bedroom here, but for the Rose Gen build that I didn't add a second bedroom, and I'll explain why in that build, but just hopefully you're looking forward to it because I genuinely had so much fun with these. Now I did add a chess table in here because of course one of the skills that these Sims need to work on is the logic skill if you're going to be in the scientist career. So I added a chess table here in the bedroom. There's also one, I think on the second floor out on like the big kind of wraparound balcony as well. And as you saw, didn't even mention it, it's like right in your face on the exterior. I added the giant telescope that we have from base game. It was the perfect opportunity and that space was perfect for it. I tested everything in this build. My sim was able to use the giant telescope. There's also the small version of the telescope from the Werewolves game pack out on that balcony. And I think a few other things just to make it usable. You know what I mean? But this is going to be the ensuite bathroom, which I really liked. I did use a more industrial looking shower instead of a shower tub combo. But in the other full bathroom, there's a shower tub combo. Just in case you actually want to play with this and play out the Not So Berry challenge, you're going to need that tub for when you have like an infant and a toddler. Unless you want to just kick right off with the Mint Air already having a child for Rose Gen. I mean, it's totally up to you. You know, it's totally up to you. You can bend the rules however you want, play however you want. But yeah, this is going to be the second bedroom. This is going to be for the Air. And I did go with a very red theme. I was a little bit hesitant to do that because I did want the home to feel very cohesive. But I thought this would be kind of me tipping my hat to that next generation, which again, I didn't do in my Rose Gen build at all, but I will explain why. And this room was actually really difficult to piece together because again, I wanted it to have that kind of industrial feel like the rest of the build, but I was looking for a certain color. And I think that's the real challenge for me personally with building for the Not So Berry challenge is I do feel inclined to try to use the color of that generation throughout the build so it's represented. But if the objects don't fit, they don't fit. Like if I have an aesthetic for the build that I'm going for, I'm not going to force it. But I was able to actually find a decent amount of things that were red. And I think what was kind of the struggle for this too, at least with a lot of the kids' objects that are the color red, is they are bright. They are so vibrant. We have so many variations of the color red in the build and buy catalog. And red's just not a color I enjoy either, which is why the build for the next gen was actually super challenging for me. But I think I ended up making it work. I tried different tones of red throughout this entire room. It's a little bit overwhelming for me personally, but I think it fits really well. So definitely let me know what you think. But I added a handful of like science-y objects because maybe as a kid, the Rose Gen Air was really into science and stuff with their parent, but mainly as a means to like connect with their parent because for the Rose Gen, it basically says you had everything that you wanted as a child, but you were always longing for more. And you have like no parental instincts, essentially. So I kind of interpreted that as the primary parent here, the Mint Gen Air, was so preoccupied with their career and their job that they really weren't that present of a parent. I don't know. Maybe that's not it. It does say that they're very career driven, but they still make time for silly pranks and outings with their closest friends, and they love luxury, and they want the best for themselves and their family. But maybe they weren't the most present parent. So like the Rose Gen as a child was trying to get into the things that their Mint parent was into to kind of connect with them. And maybe it just didn't work that well. I don't know. That's kind of my thought. I wanted to give some rationale as to why the Rose Gen would have like more sciencey objects in their room. But the room is now pretty much done. And now we're just decorating the hallways, which are very plainly decorated. I realized I didn't even have a bookcase in this build. That's wild. I always have like 3 bookcases. So I made sure to add a bookcase, and then we just work on the lab as the final little spot. And the lab was not as big as I wanted it to be, or as big as I thought it was going to be. But it ended up working. We have the chemical analyzer here. We have the little chemistry station thing that came with Get to Work. Usually when I say the chemistry station, it's like the kids one. And I added just like a ton of different posters that were either like periodic tables, elements, science related in some capacity. I wanted to use this decorative table with like the piece of the mother plant from Strangerville, but it's not functional and it was taking up space that I needed, so I ditched it. And then I add the wormhole portal and I think a desk with a computer for this sim as well. And that's pretty much it for this build. I hope you all enjoyed this one. I cannot wait to hear your thoughts. It's so different for me, and I just absolutely love how it came out. So I can't wait to hear what you all think, but I will catch you next time I post a video, and I will talk to you soon. Bye.